Sometimes even good people can make a mistake. And when it happens, it's one of the most intense and emotional experiences of your life. It could be a DUI, or maybe you were in the wrong place with the wrong people at the wrong time. Or perhaps you just did something stupid at the spur of the moment without even thinking, and now you're in trouble with the law. Well, you need experienced legal help right away so you don't become a victim of the criminal justice system. Even good people can make a mistake, and if you, a friend, or loved one has been accused of a crime, don't make another mistake by hiring the wrong attorney for the kind of help you need. You need to visit toddjohnslaw.com. That's toddjohnslaw.com, and then call Attorney Todd Johns today. Attorney Todd Johns has decades of experience helping good people like you who have made mistakes or bad decisions and will stand by you every step of the way. toddjohnslaw.com.
All right, welcome to That's Enough Out of You podcast. We have a special episode today that we're putting out, an extra episode. We got Mark Adamczyk here with us, and this is an episode that we're not going to talk to Mark about JFK or the law or anything like that. We're talking about college football. So how you doing, Mark?
I'm great. Yeah, this will be fun to switch gears a little bit, and
Sure.
I follow Florida State quite closely, as you do with Notre Dame. So this will be, I guess, a preview of sorts for this week.
Well, when we planned this, Mark, back in, I guess it would have been the summer, about August, we talked about doing this episode for the preview. We thought maybe this would be a top 5 matchup, or maybe at least top 10. And it turned out that Florida State's just fell apart. So we're going to get into a little bit about the game, and then I want to get into Florida State, talk about the state of the program, and I'll do the same with Notre Dame. But I want to give you my perspective and see if you agree with me of what's happening with Florida State, just from an outsider view. I think that one of the problems with Florida State is that they use the portal quite a bit. Like for Notre Dame, we use the portal like just to fill in some gaps with recruiting. And I think Florida State seems to use the portal quite a bit. Like last year worked out, but when you use the portal that much, you don't know if these guys are going to gel, with these transfers. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like they have quite a few transfers. Yeah. And it just seems like it didn't work out this year like it did last year. Everybody gelled and they were an undefeated regular season team. And this year they come in 1-8, which is shocking to everybody, really, because the roster, when I look at the roster, it's still a very talented roster. And there's no reason for them to be 1-8. And I still like the head coach. I think he's a really good head coach. I just think, that sometimes when you use the portal too much, something like this could happen and you could lose the team early when the guys aren't gelling. And that's just my perspective. I don't know. You fought a team more than me. So what do you got?
Well, I think that has definitely come up to be a problem in a massive way this year. Coach Norvell, was ahead of the curve with the portal in 2001 and 2002, right? He had to be, because he inherited Willie Taggart's roster that was not very good. And it was fractured, left over, and Jimbo didn't leave in very good shape either. So before NIL became the thing that it is now, Norvell, I think, wisely got ahead of the curve, and he brought in guys like Jermaine Johnson and then Jordan Travis was a transfer under Taggart, but you look at Keon Coleman, guys like that coming there, and Johnny Wilson and Trey Benson, all guys that are in the NFL now. So while that team was heavily powered by transfers, Norvell simply hasn't had he's had 5 years on campus now. His first year, he really couldn't recruit normally with COVID. It's not an excuse, but he just had a weird start, right? So he hasn't put together, 5, 6, 7, 8 high school recruiting classes in a row, and the program hadn't had much success, so he had to go to the portal. Now, what happened with 2024, and this is my simplest explanation of it, because very few people, even the beat writers and the media guys in Tallahassee who I listen to every day, none of them can really explain it. I mean, it's it's a landslide of historical proportions, going
Sure.
13-0 to likely 2-10, right? So
Right.
what happened? What I think with the Orange Bowl team that they were stuck with after the playoff fiasco. All the NFL guys who were the leaders on that team, very talented players too, did not play. That roster got just hammered by Georgia, who cared to play there. And that same roster Norvell took into 2024, who had just lost by 60 points to Georgia. The only practices they did between then and Dublin when we played Georgia Tech were against each other. And then
Sure.
this year in the portal, Mike added essentially nothing of value. So that's where we are.
Well, I mean, their schedule with you mentioned that they're probably going to end up 2-10. I mean, they got Notre Dame this week, and then I think they got Florida at the end of the year, and then what's the other game? Charleston Southern or something like
That's
that.
right. Charleston
So-
Southern's in for a
Yeah,
whooping, man.
they're going to win that game, right? So, I mean, yeah, to be 2-10, I mean, it is hard to explain. I mean,
Yeah.
their schedule is pretty competitive. It's a tough schedule, but still, there's a lot of teams on that schedule, like, BC and Memphis and Duke, that they should have never lost to. I mean, it's mind-boggling how far they fell. But I told you that I think this game was worrying me more than any other game in Northern schedule, and you thought I was crazy to say that, because we still got Army, who's undefeated. The Academies always play as tough, and we got USC, who's a big rivalry. But I don't know if I still feel that way. I think USC and I think maybe Army is going to give us our toughest game left. I think Florida State, though, is going to play well in this game, though. I do, because I think I'm going to give you my state at a Notre Dame program and see if you agree, because they had the big win to start the season with Texas A&M, and again, Texas A&M lost this week to South Carolina, but they lost on the road. So to me, that doesn't diminish the win at Texas A&M, because it's tough to win in the SEC on the road. Any team in the SEC on the road, and especially A&M, that's a tough place to play. So that was a huge win. And then you come back the next week and you just play your F game, just terrible against Northern Illinois. But that was a pattern with Marcus Freeman, the young coach who took over with no head coach experience. If you go back to his first year, they go to the big house, the horseshoe, sorry. They lose to Ohio State in a competitive game in the opener, right? And everybody thinks, well, Notre Dame played well. They're gonna go on a roll. They come home and they lose to Marshall. Okay, then they go to Vegas. They play BYU. They win that game. They come back. They lose to a Stanford team that was actually worse than Marshall or Northern Illinois. And you see a pattern there. So 3 times this happened where they have a big road win or a game on the road, and then they come back and they lose to a team that's athletically inferior. So I seen a pattern developing, but what I've seen since then is that Freeman, I think he learned his lesson, and I think he started to realize that college football is so different in the NFL. It's not a bunch of robots and battle coordinators. It's a lot of emotion, and it's a lot of the games are really won during the week of preparation. Like you can't just flick a switch on Saturday, and I don't care who you're playing, especially in this day and age with NIL, because even the teams that you don't expect, they have athletes because of NIL now. So you just can't show up and expect to win these games. And I think, Notre Dame has, since then, they've really, I mean, Louisville was a competitive game, but other than that, they haven't really played a competitive game. They've blown everybody out. And in the Louisville game was a situation where they had so many injuries in that game, Notre Dame. It was unbelievable. And that's one thing that still worries me, because while Freeman's recruited well, and he's got the depth really good, they've had more injuries this year than I've seen in since I've been following Notre Dame. I mean, they lost so many guys to season-ending injuries. So right now the depth is these next 4 games, they can't afford any more injuries. If they have another injury, it's going to really put a damper on their playoff chances if they get there, because their depth is really right now it's tapped. It's really tapped, especially on defense, which is the strength of the team. So I think that's the one concern I have with Notre Dame. And the other thing is developing the passing game. I think Riley Leonard came into the year, and I think a lot of people didn't appreciate how slow it was going to take him coming off an injury, not playing in the spring at all, working with all new receivers, working with a new team. And it really took him a good month and a half to really get going. And I think he's playing his best football right now. And if the pass game could develop and they could stay healthy, I like Notre Dame's chances going in the playoff game, but those are two big concerns for me. I don't know what you feel.
Yeah, I remember Leonard was at Duke, and if I recall, he was iffy for the Florida State game last year, wasn't fully healthy, and I was worried about that game because he's good. I mean, he's good, and
And he's taking a lot of heat this year. A lot
yeah,
of
yeah. Well, right. I mean, we can't block air, but
heat.
it's no, well, the quarterback at a program like Notre Dame is, it's a different situation, a lot more attention than say at Duke. But
Sure.
no, I think, like you said, they had that one awful hiccup, but otherwise they played really well. I mean, beating Syracuse, who just knocked off Clemson pretty easily, was, I think, a solid win. And then, you got, after us, you have Southern Cal and I think Army. Is that right?
Army and Virginia too, we have.
In Virginia, yeah, Virginia's spotty. I mean, the ACC is
Yeah, they're up and down.
AC. Like, look at Pitt this year, and they bring in a new offensive coordinator, and now they're a top 10 offense. SMU just put up points on Pitt, so it's really hard. Even the Georgia Tech win, I would give Notre Dame credit for that with their weird running game. It's a common opponent of ours, I guess.
Sure.
But I think the thing that stands out to me, I know Notre Dame has at least two guys that are going to be NFL draft picks that have been hurt, and then others, like you said.
Well, yeah, Benjamin Morrison was our top 10 NFL draft pick. He's going to be a first rounder and he's out for the year. That's a huge loss, but they have a lot of depth at corner, but that's still a loss. I mean, you can't replace a guy like that. And then our two edge rushers are out. We have three offensive linemen that are out, and that's not including the offensive lineman that was supposed to take over left tackle this year, Charles Jagasaw. He was hurt before the season started and was a season-ending injury. And we had two tackles go pro early that should have been seniors this year, but they were juniors that went pro. One of them, Joe Alt, was a top, I think he was number 6 overall pick. So it's the restructuring of the offensive line. There's a lot of injuries, like the depth. Freeman's really recruited well. He's really done a nice job. He's done a great job in the South. Down in Texas, he's got brought in a lot of speed and stuff. But like I said, the depth right now is tapped because of these injuries. I never seen so many season-ending injuries. A lot of them ACL, and I don't know if it's just freak injuries, if somebody's sitting there with a voodoo doll, or if it's the turf, or if it's the new strength conditioning coach that they brought over from Denver. I don't know what the issue is.
Yeah.
They got to look into that off season to figure out why do you have so many ACL season-ending injuries, because they have about a half dozen or more of them right now, and that's scary.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, the injury bug it has been bad. It kind of a related topic. I don't know what you think of this, but the FSU guys talk a lot about the fact that they don't hit and they don't tackle at practice ever, right?
Yes,
and
huge
the
factor.
first time they actually get hit is week 1 in live action, and I don't know if there's the body's not quite prepared for getting hit as it normally would be, and I know it's not just Florida State. I don't know how Notre Dame practices, but I assume it's similar.
It's similar. Like they usually have during the week they'll have their heavy contact. Usually be like the Tuesdays. Usually their heavy contact day. So you can't really, like back in the day. Like I remember Lou Holtz talking about he might have 3-4 heavy practice days, heavy contact. You can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
You can't afford to get guys injured in practice. So most teams only have that one. And Freeman kind of was structuring his thing a little different, and he kind of changed for like Northern Illinois and these games coming off the big road test, and he changed this philosophy where usually they do their walkthrough on Friday, and he was doing his walkthrough on Thursday, and that's 2 full days with no practice. You're not practicing Thursday and Friday, and then you try to throw on a light switch on Saturday. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. So I think there's something to that with because most teams usually only have one heavy hit in practice during the week because you can't afford to do anymore, and you can't afford to get guys hurt. And you're right. Then the speed of the game is so different on a Saturday
Yeah.
where you could get injuries. So maybe a lot of these are because of that. But I mean, what's the answer to that? Because if you try to practice more during the week, like if you try to add another heavy hitting practice day, you could get injuries in practice.
Yeah. I don't know. It's well, I mean, the guys are, there's NFL bodies now all over the field too, more than ever. The strength is
Unbelievable.
it's off the charts, and the size of these guys. So I don't know the answer to that, or there's some bad luck.
Well, one thing I want to add though, Mark, is a lot of them that Notre Dame had were away from the action injuries, like away from the ball
Right.
injuries, like just
Right.
guys like landing, guys away from the action, and they're just land the wrong way. They jump up and they land, and all of a sudden they're down on the ground and they're getting carried off the field. So it's like this is very strange. I could see if somebody gets, one of these 300-pounders get rolled up on your knee and your ankle, sure. But these are like non-contact injuries, and that's what the scary part is, like what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm chuckling because we had our offensive tackle got injured in pregame warmups.
Yeah,
We had to get so
it could
that's,
happen.
that's how our season is going. Uh,
Yeah.
no, but they shouldn't have, Notre Dame shouldn't have. I don't want to minimize what they're facing on Saturday night, but I can tell you we don't hit people. We had multiple chances against Miami to hit Cam Ward and just chose not to. They were hitting us, that's for sure. So the other thing that's scary about this team right now is we're starting to see the quit watch. So against
That's,
North Carolina, I watched. I never miss a game, so I watched the North Carolina game, and for the first time, you were not everybody, but you were starting to see enough guys pack it in, and that's
yeah,
a concern. So
and that's a big concern, sure. So let's get into kind of the nuts and bolts of this game. So Florida State looks like, to me, it seems like their major problem is on the offensive side of the ball. Would you say that's correct? Like
yeah,
you know, they just don't seem to have the firepower that they've had. The points they're scoring like 13, 14 points in some of these games. I mean, that's just not enough in this day and age to win, no matter how good your defense is. And I think that's a problem. But another thing is, I think the key to this game on Saturday, let me see if you agree with me, is the start. If Florida State comes in fired up and ready to play, and Notre Dame doesn't, and it's a slow, sluggish start for Notre Dame, I could see this turn into a dogfight because I could see the more, like you mentioned, the quit factor. Well, if Notre Dame comes in really focused and they jump out to a big lead, I could see Florida State quitting. A lot of the guys, not the whole team, but a lot of the guys just saying pack it in because it might be cold there. You got to figure it's going to be cold in South Bend. It's a night game.
yeah.
By 9 o'clock at night, who knows? It might be in the 20s. The guys could pack it in. But if Florida State comes in and Notre Dame doesn't treat this like, they can't go into this game thinking they're playing a 1-18. They got to go in there thinking they're playing a Florida State brand. Because if they don't, I think this could be a dogfight.
Well, yeah. Well, you can talk about the offense, although there's not much to say other than it's gross and it's unwatchable. They're almost dead last in every category that matters, and that's why it's a 26.5-point spread at the moment. But the thing about it is we have been within a score or say 10 points in almost every game this season. Okay.
Yeah.
The defense is not good, but they do hold their own, force field goals. They can't get off the field on third down. I mean, I can't tell you how many third and longs they give up and stay on the field. And then, they do bow up sometimes down in the red zone. But what's been happening is, it's like the two sides of the ball play off each other, right? And the defense
Sure.
will hold. I mean, they held Cam Ward in Miami to their lowest output of anybody, and they have the number one offense in the country until the defense at some point it's like, okay,
You're going to get tired. Sure.
get tired and mentally be like, I know we're not going to score more than 13 points.
And that kills you.
What are we doing here? So
Yeah.
that's again, I unfortunately, I wish I could predict something different. I just think we're going to see more of that this weekend. Like you said, the environment's going to be that much less comfortable. But heck, they don't get up for games at home. They don't get up for games in Miami. I mean, I've watched it. So how they couldn't get up to play at Notre Dame, that you can't answer that. But it's just you want the season to be over, but you don't. But I can tell you Mike Norvell does, and they're going to be making changes. So,
Do you think Norvell's on the hot seat?
well, he's on the hot seat, but the problem is his buyout is $63 million.
That's an issue.
Yeah, and
That's
we
a
don't
big
have
issue.
and we don't have the SEC or Big Ten money yet. And it's just, and then you get rid of him now. And listen, the performance this season alone is fireable, but
Sure.
he just did win 19 straight games. He's got to
Yep.
make changes on offense, and you want to spend another 60 million on a brand new staff with no guarantees.
No guarantees. I think he's a good football coach. I do. I think the first game I seen him, Notre Dame, Florida State 2021 season opener, and Florida State was coming off a couple bad seasons. And I said after that game, it was Marcus Freeman's first game as defensive coordinator. And I said, this guy's going to be a good football coach. Florida State will be back very soon. And I was right, because he really turned them around quickly. And I thought he was a good football. I still think he's a good football coach. But I think one of the keys of the game is, you mentioned how, the offense has been the weakness for Florida State. Well, the defense is in the strength of Notre Dame. I mean, their defense is really suffocating. I mean, they don't give up. Louisville scored 24 points, but like I said, a lot of them, they had a lot of injuries on the defensive side of that game. 3-4 starters went down early and were out for the rest of the game. And I think, but even so, they control that game, most of that game. So I think, they don't give up a lot of points on defense. Even the game they lost Northern Illinois, they only gave up 16 points. So they don't give up a lot of points.
No.
But the thing is, you mentioned the Florida State defense. I mean, is their defense, is their strength of their defense the run defense or the pass defense?
Well, they've got NFL talent on that side of the ball for sure. They just haven't matched the intensity, come close to matching the intensity of Jared Verse and Braden Fisk from that are on the Rams now and just wreaking havoc in the league already.
And Braden Fisk, I got to tell you, he was a guy that was in the portal last year, and Notre Dame went after him big time. They wanted him bad, and you guys got him. And I was so aggravated when you guys got him, because
I know
he's a good football player. He has
a motor. I was watching one of the Rams games, and
no off switch.
And those guys were really good friends in Tallahassee. The Rams were so ecstatic to get them both, and they're number 1 and number 2 right now in the league as rookies in pass pressures, 1 and 2 on the same team, rookies. So
wow.
I mean, that's the type of intensity there. So our secondary can play man-to-man coverage. They're not going to give up easy scores downfield. Our defensive ends have been a big time disappointment, not the pressure we thought we'd get. The interior is big, and there's a couple NFL guys there, Josh Farmer and Daryl Jackson. The linebackers have improved, but covering their gaps on those runs up the middle, you go crazy. Miami did it. And then if we saw it with North Carolina, the kid there, Hampton, this week went for 265 yards and 5 scores on nothing fancy, So, Notre Dame is obviously good enough on offense. They're top 10 defense on the other side of the ball. So statistically, and here's the thing, Sean, we're almost dead last in the country in turnover margin. Okay, so
you can't.
To win this game, we're going to need to not turn it over and force Notre Dame to turn it over 3-4 times. Well, we don't do that. So that's the other issue.
Well, one concern my side of the ball here is that Notre Dame's offensive line, very young, but very good run blockers, excellent run blockers, and they got some running backs. Notre Dame could go 5 deep running backs, and Jeremiah Love is a stud. The NFL is drooling at him right now, and he's only a sophomore. He can't come out, but he's fantastic. But pass pro has been a problem. They got very young tackles. Even on the inside, it's been an issue, especially now with some injuries. They got three linemen out. So pass pro has been an issue. And you mentioned those guys. Florida State's been a little disappointing in the edge, but they got some edge rushers at Florida State. If they turn it up for one game, this is a game where that could be an advantage for Florida State, because, like I said, Notre Dame struggles a little bit with pass pro. That's something they got to improve in these next 4 games going into the playoffs. So if Florida State, they definitely have those edge rushers. that can step up for one game. So that's an issue. That's a concern.
Yeah, the talent's there. I mean, Patrick Payton and Marvin Jones Jr. are the starters on the edge. Marvin Jones' father is a legendary linebacker at Florida State, so he's a legacy kid. They just haven't matched that intensity. I remember when Jermaine Johnson came in 2021. His first game was when Notre Dame was in Tallahassee. I was there for that game, and he really started the turnaround on that defense and really the spirit of the team. And then, you got guys like Jared Verse and Braden Fisk to commit. So, and Pat Payton is an NFL guy. He was projected to be possibly a first rounder if he played out like Jared Verse did or close to it. And, he's taken a lot of heat for his lazy play this year and it's like, you can't make sense of it because even if the team isn't very good, you're playing to get to that next level. And I don't know if it's a scheme thing. I mean, they will get to your quarterback. They got to Cam Ward a lot in the Miami game, but he extended plays and, found guys downfield and did his thing. So if Leonard will do some of that, then they shouldn't have much of an issue. Plus, they can just run the ball up the middle on Florida State. Not every play, but, I've seen that a lot lately too.
Well, I mean, like I said, they're really good run blockers. I mean, even teams stacking the line, they put 9-10 guys in the box, and Notre Dame's still running the ball well, especially with the Riley Leonard, because you got to count for him as a runner.
Yeah,
I mean, he's like another running back in the backfield, so you got to count for that. But I do worry about that edge rush. That's one concern. So, for me, it's about the quick start. How does Notre Dame come out? And if Florida State doesn't come out, like you said earlier, they have to be up for this game playing at Notre Dame Stadium. I mean, it's a night game. It's going to be on national TV. It's a big game, no matter what the record is, and it's still two major brands. Like you have to get up for this game if you're Florida State. I mean, and you got guys like you said, you got NFL guys on there. They're playing. This is a game that NFL scouts are going to be looking at. This is a game that's going to have a spotlight on them. So if Florida State is ever going to play one game that's their Super Bowl, it's going to be this game. They're going to be fired up for this game. But what kind of changed my mind, Mark, is when I didn't see the fire against Miami. Like I really thought they would have a fire against Miami, and that would have worried me even more if I seen that fire against Miami. But I just didn't like if they couldn't get up for Miami. I don't know, if they're going to get up for Notre Dame. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that when I was watching same impression watching Miami and all the folks down here were talking about it. It's like that is other than Florida, that's your most hated rival. That was also a night game. You have a chance to spoil their season. I mean, there was a couple times when Cam Ward just waltzed over to the sideline to run out of bounds, and he could have got hit, and they just chose not to. You just can't make sense of it. And so maybe the quit started to happen there. They just don't have any I don't care what sport you're playing, at what level, the self-belief and the confidence is not there. And, and Norvell is as shocked as anybody. He said so in his press conference today after practice. He said changes will be happening. And he, of course, it's all coach speak. They can't say exactly what's on their mind and call people under the bus or whatever. But yeah, it's that was makes me worried about them getting up for this Saturday, is not even getting up for Miami. And then who knows what Doe Campbell is going to look like when Florida comes to town in a few weeks, and they're playing hard.
Yeah, Florida's been playing good. I mean, they played Georgia really hard this weekend.
Yeah, so I hope we see it just comes down to if they can just sustain a drive, get the clock rolling, keep it close into halftime, maybe make a big play in the third quarter, make it a game in the fourth quarter. But the scoring the points, I mean, they're almost dead last nationally in points per game, rushing, and yards per game. So how that's going to change now, you have two freshman quarterback playing behind this offensive line, and it's hard to evaluate either one of them. And everyone wanted to blame DJ Uiagalelei early on for all the offense problems. And why aren't you putting someone else in, Norvell? What are you doing? And it's like, well, now we know why.
Yeah.
They're going backwards. So I'm hoping for it, Sean. I'm still going to watch. I usually watch the whole game because now we're starting to see a lot of the younger guys getting action as well, because this season's a wrap,
Yeah.
So they got to see what they got for next year, and then hope to keep the guys on the roster who can play from
Mhm.
transferring, you know?
Yeah, and that's the thing with NIL, with and with the transfer portal the way it is, where guys could transfer every time there's an open transfer session. That you got to kind of re-recruit these guys, like even the guys on your roster. So that
Yeah.
makes recruiting even that much harder. You know, and
Yeah.
teams are breaking the rules, and they're talking to kids while they're already signed at another school. I mean, that's happening all the time, and the NCAA is doing nothing about it. So that's a major problem. But do you want to do predictions here and then get on to the state of college football
Yeah.
and talk a little bit go around the table on the teams, or
Sure.
do you want to do a prediction, or no? It's up to
Oh
you.
yeah, I'd love to.
Go
Yeah.
ahead, buddy.
Well,
You go
okay.
first.
So I looked it up today. As we said, the spread is 26 and a half.
Right.
The over under is 42 and a half. I'm going to encourage, I don't bet on sports regularly, but if I did, I would pound the over on the 42 and a half,
Okay.
because I can see 35-10 quite easily in this game, or worse. So that's kind of how I'm seeing it. However, um, if Florida State shows up to play, I could see 30-13. I just have a hard time finding some explanation or reason for us. It's going to be a race to 14 points. Let's call it that way. And then
Okay.
whoever gets, so we know which team's going over that. So give me 30-13, Notre Dame.
You stole my thunder, because that's exactly what I was going to say.
No
30 to
way.
13, honest to God. Because I think no matter what Freeman does in preparation for this game, I think it's just human nature that Notre Dame's going to be looking at that score, at that record of 1-8, and I think coming in, I think this is going to be early. I really expect Florida State to come in playing hard. I really do. I'd be disappointed if they just come in and they just show no fight at all. I'll be disappointed, but I think they're going to come in. I think this is going to be a really close game early, and I
Mhm.
think Florida State, maybe they get a turnover early. They stack the box and maybe they pressure Riley off the edge. And I could see Notre Dame's offense looking sluggish, and
Mhm.
especially coming off the bye. So I could see like something like maybe a 13-10, even Florida State leading going into halftime or something like that. And then I think Notre Dame will pull away late. I think 30-13, something like that. I could see eventually the Notre Dame run game, I think, will take over. And I think the defense, like you said before, Mark, if your defense is on the field, they're going to get tired. And I think Notre Dame's defense should be able to stop Florida State enough in the second half, I think, to put their Florida State's defense on the field too much, and the offense is going to put them in a hole. And then I think that's how the game's going to go. But I really think this is going to be a close game early, and maybe even into the late into the third quarter. I could still see Florida State. I'll be disappointed if we're going in the fourth quarter and the backups are in. Like I really want to see Florida State come out, and I want to see a good game, and I want to see. I'm not worried about, like, people are talking about Notre Dame has to win bigger. They're not going to get in. Notre Dame's 11-1. They're getting in the playoffs. That's
Oh
ESPN
yeah.
talking. They're getting in. So I'd rather see. I want to see a competitive game. I want to see, Florida State come and play hard, and I think they will. I think they will.
Well, it depends on what kind of practices they've had this week. Maybe internal meetings on playing for something, because, like I said, the season's been a wrap for a while now. The only reason that the score may not get out of hand has nothing to do with Notre Dame not playing well. They will. Is it's Our offense is so bad that opposing coaches have just been taking points. Like I saw Clemson, Dabo did it, right? They only beat us 29-13, I think 29, something like that. Miami was not really running away until the end when we were just exhausted. So they
Yeah,
were just taking field goals and not, going for it unnecessarily on fourth down, because they know that 21 points is enough to beat Florida State, you
I
know.
just I don't know if Freeman will do that though. Freeman's been really aggressive.
Well, yeah, he
He's
should be,
been
because they need to do everything they can to win convincingly, and
Sure,
so
but even like early in the year though, he's been going for it on fourth down a lot. There's times even in his own territory, he go for it. Like he's just really been aggressive.
yeah.
So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I do expect Florida State to play hard. So
the one thing I can tell you, you better watch out for this. We have really good kickers. Okay, our
Yeah.
punter,
You
our
got the
punter's on a pitch count. He punts
don't you
from
have the kickers from Ireland, right? Or the punter?
Australia. Yeah,
Oh, Australia. Okay. I
He-
thought it was from
he's
Ireland.
leading the country in punting average. Our field goal kicker hasn't missed from over 50 this year yet. I think he's nailed 5 or 6 of them. So,
Yeah.
just I'm being a little facetious. You better watch out for our special teams. We catch punts, we don't return them, but the kickers, they can control the field position at least.
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, we got that kick returner from Marshall, Harrison, Jaden Harrison, and he was the number 2 kick returner in the country. And he's yet to break one. I mean, they use him a little bit at receiver and stuff, but he's yet to break one. So I don't know if we'll see one. I'd like to see one before the end of the year. We'll see what happens. Let's go around the horn, Mark, and talk a little bit big picture college football. Let's start with the Ohio State Penn State game because I know here in PA I got a lot of friends that are Penn State fans, and I'll tell you, talking to them, like if I was a Penn State fan, I would want James Franklin out of there. Like I don't know how they put up with the guy. Like they just seem to be content with, okay, he's going to win 10 games, he's going to beat all the bad teams. But every time he plays a team that has a decent coach and has some athletes, they lose. Like they're 1-10 against Ohio State. They're like 3-19 or something, 3-20 against ranked teams.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like they've been the same team for a decade under Franklin, and there's no progress. And then I watched a little of the game Saturday in Ohio State. Penn State goes in, they have a first and goal from the 1 yard line, the Ohio State 1 yard line. And Franklin runs about 3 times up the middle, can't get a yard. Then he throws the ball at 4th down, and they threw to a guy that was in quadruple coverage. And they have that number 44. I can't think of his name right now. He's the tight end. Warren, is it Warren? Yeah, I think it's Ty Warren, but he's a really good player. I would love to have him on Notre Dame, but they use him the Wildcat. They use him running the ball in the H back. They use him all. He's their best player, and they don't even give him the ball. In 4 tries from the 1 yard line, you don't even give your best player the ball like that to me. And then Franklin, after the game, he's fighting with a fan, an 18-year-old freshman student. You're yelling and calling him out and asking him his name, and like that's just, to me, it's just a bad look. And I don't understand why Penn State fans are so content with having him, because Brian Kelly won 10 games every year, and Notre Dame fans wanted him to run out of town because he couldn't beat Alabama, and it's like it gets to a point where, I think somebody's going to step in and offer Franklin a job. And I think the first job offer he gets, I think he's going to take it, because I think he knows that. I think he's got Penn State to their ceiling where he could take them. I don't think he could take them any farther than he's right now. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't watch I haven't watched many of their games, but I agree with you. When he's not very likable, right?
No, very no.
No, and then it's like, well, where, I mean, it's a top coaching destination, so who would they get that's going to necessarily do better? So being content, no, I'm sure they're not, but they're not quite at Ohio State's level. Even when Michigan was rolling, they're just not quite there. So that's kind of where Florida State would be if they made a move with Norvell. Whether probably won't be this year with the buyout, but let's say it's next year. Who's going to come? And so I'm sure Penn State's obviously right now it's a more attractive job than Florida State's job, but at least on current state of things. But yeah, I think it's he's probably run his course there. It just is what it is type thing. And but then the ugly stuff, like you said, the unlikable stuff.
Yeah, really unlikable. Even with that, he had the charges, the 2 kids that were accused of rape, and the reporter asked him about that, and he just walked off the stage, and had one of his media guys come over to answer. Like just a very unlikable guy. Like he just. But let's talk about Ohio State for a minute, because you look at that roster, and they're loaded. Their receivers they got unbelievable receivers. That Jeremiah Smith freshman is unbelievable. Abuku's still there. They're just loaded at receiver. Carnell Tate was a big time recruit. Notre Dame wanted him bad. But I watched them play. They really didn't. That's the bad thing about this for Penn State is Ohio State didn't play good at all. in that
No.
game, but Penn State didn't score an offensive touchdown, and you're not beating Ohio State. You can't score an offensive touchdown. And I just see like Ohio State, like even the Oregon game, even though they lost by 1 point, Oregon could have pulled away in that game, and they didn't. Like I just think Ohio State, to me, I haven't seen anything from them that's been that they've lived up to their potential, because I think that roster's loaded. I mean, that roster is but
Oh,
I think they got some problems on the offensive line. I think they had some injuries, and they kind of putting a makeshift line out there. But when they had to move the ball at the end at Penn State, they moved it. Penn State couldn't get it back. So, but I just think that to me, they haven't shown yet. We'll see what happens on the road. Now, if he loses to Michigan again, look out, because as crazy as it'll be, Ryan Day will be on the hot seat if he loses to Michigan 4 years in a row, and they don't make the playoffs, and they knock him out of the playoffs. I mean, I could see, because I think the way it is now, I don't know if well, they're playing Indiana, so I guess they could get to the Big Ten championship game to rematch with Oregon, because they got Indiana coming up.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I like Signetti, the coach there.
Yeah,
His press conferences are great. I would love if he.
what a job he's doing.
I'd love if he came to Tallahassee if it doesn't work out with Norvell. But their offense is awesome, fun to watch. So it could just be a great year they're having. They're not Ohio State or Michigan or even Oregon or whatever. So, but that's going to be a good one as far as they can get anybody they want. Ohio State can. Their recruiting pipeline is been established for so long now, and they, But I think in general, not just Ohio State, but there's really not a team right now that you look at anywhere in the top 10, and you're like, oh, they're unbeatable. I mean,
Oh, I agree.
so
I agree.
with the playoff, it's going to be extremely fun to watch. You can look at a number 8 seed, like a 6 seed in the NFL barely
Yeah.
make the playoffs, and they get hot, and the next thing you know, they're in the Super Bowl. So you could see that this year.
You could, and I think there's about 8 or 9 teams right now that on any given day could beat anybody in the country.
Yeah.
I think there's so yeah, I agree with you. What do you make of the SEC? Because it's been wide open. Alabama's down a little bit. Georgia, I mean, still a talented roster. They had that one bad game against Alabama, but they've also struggled. Georgia, they struggled this week with Florida. Kentucky game, they struggled. I mean, they haven't been the tip, and maybe part of it's that the schedule is so hard. But I still look at that Georgia roster, and it's low. Georgia's recruited like unbelievable.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I look at the way they played this year, and I don't think they've played up to their potential.
Well,
So
yeah, the SEC has been weird. I mean, they're always going to say that their schedule is so much harder than anybody else's, and yes, it is the hardest and most competitive conference. But they love to say that. Oh, if
they
you're
love
not,
to say it, but
if you're not in the SEC, then
Yeah.
you're not really playing. The best of the best. So I
but
get
it's a little top heavy. Let's be honest, though. It usually is.
Oh, my son just chimed in. He said he thinks the Big Ten is the most competitive. So okay, hold on.
Interesting. I mean, I think they're both a little top heavy, though. I
Yeah,
think
they are, and that's I think has usually been the case. I don't know. I mean, Bama has a very losable game coming up. I forget which it is, but that would be their 3rd loss, and they'd be out. Georgia, as great as they looked, I personally think they were still the best team in the country last year and didn't make the playoff. I
yeah.
mean, they were playing really well, and Bama beat them. So looking, for example, what Florida has left, they have Texas this week, LSU, Ole Miss, and then the mighty Seminoles to close the year. I mean, that's a tough schedule.
Tough schedule. Yeah, Florida's schedule is brutal.
It is.
It's probably the toughest schedule in the country.
Oh yeah, I don't think it's really close. So
No.
it's going to be, they're going to have at least half the playoff teams are probably going to, well, maybe not half, but at least 5, and then you'll have the Big Ten, and then from the ACC, I mean, Clemson's now done, having lost to Louisville, I would think.
Yeah.
ACC, I can tell you, is doing everything they can to get Miami in there. If you've seen some of their
Sure. Absolutely.
in some of those games.
Well, right now it looks like it could be Miami SMU, right? For the
Yeah.
championship. I mean, SMU is. I watched SMU. They're a good team. They got some athletes. SMU. I don't know how to stack up with the elites in the playoffs, but they got some athletes.
I went to the game in Dallas when Florida State was there. That was like a month and a half ago. And you know, when you look at them, you don't think, oh, this is a very big or even a very good football team, but they play well as a team. And you know, they just took it to Pitt. I mean, that was ugly. And I like Narduzzi and what Pitt's done, and they just rolled them.
Right, they did.
But no, the SEC is good. It's just it has been weird. I mean, Bama losing at Vanderbilt. You know,
Vanderbilt's done a nice job though. Clark Lee was our old defensive coordinator, and he's done a really nice job there at his alma mater. And they're playing good ball, Vanderbilt. That's
what you're gonna see, and this maybe touches on the big picture a little bit. And I think Florida State's an extreme example of what we're gonna see more of is great teams like Washington and Michigan. I'm sorry, Washington and Michigan. Yeah, we're in the national championship game last year. Both
right.
of them aren't very good this year.
No.
And so the 1 year transfers and the NIL. No, I don't think it's going to impact, of course, Notre Dame, Georgia, Ohio State as much. Even Clemson, because you know Dabo doesn't know the portal exists still.
No, he won't use it. He refuses to use it.
So
it's unbelievable.
He's gonna have his 9-10 wins, but yeah, you're gonna see more like the NFL, where you see a 5-11 team all of a sudden be 11-5 the next year. So that's kind of where I see it going, and where if there's going to be any regulation on it or whatever. I was looking at that again today. There doesn't seem to be anything that's going to change anytime real soon. So it's just it's like you said, you're not only recruiting new guys, you're re-recruiting your own roster. Imagine what it was like as a Norvell or a Freeman, before all this. Now the phone calls and everything from parents of current players, and the recruits, and then now let's say Norvell unloads his staff and starts fresh, like a Matt Campbell did, or some, at Iowa State, or even Brian Kelly didn't he, back in the day at Notre Dame, right?
Sure.
Before it was like, if you're on the roster, okay, boy, I hope I like my new position coach or my new coordinator, because you're there for 4 years or whatever.
Right.
And now it's like, okay.
You can leave, and that's why you got to keep re-recruiting these guys, so you don't have to just recruit high school players anymore. You got to recruit your current players, because you can lose the roster really quick, and it's just crazy. But let's talk about Tulane, because you have a tie-in with Tulane. You went there. Their program's been really coming on the last few years, and I like a lot of the athletes they're bringing in.
You know what? They're doing less with more. They generally have. I was there as a junior for Tommy Bowden's '98 undefeated season.
Okay.
And that was when they still played in the Superdome, and Sean King was their quarterback when the Bucks drafted him. I knew him pretty well. We were both in the business school together.
Oh, and nice.
And then they had some not so great coaches, and now they put a cool thing they did is they put a stadium on campus. It only holds about 23,000 people, but that's created. I went to a game there, and it's a lot better than like what Miami has to do and what Tulane had to do. You're traveling off campus, to the stadium or whatever. So, but no, their quarterback's good. They're now 7-2 with first place in the AAC, and probably not a playoff team. They still have Memphis and I want to say Army, two pretty good teams. And if they win those, they're definitely looking at a New Year's Six game again. They beat USC in the Cotton Bowl.
USC, with Caleb Williams.
Yeah, with Caleb Williams. That's right.
Yeah.
So they're fun to watch. I don't get to see them on TV I'd rather watch more of them than Florida State at the moment. But having been alums of both schools, it's going to be a green wave bowl day, because Florida State's not going to a bowl. That's for sure.
How much did you watch of Oregon this year? Because I think if I had to pick who's the best team right now, I think I would have to go with Oregon. Watching them play a few times, they got a really good team. Their coach is kind of unlikable, to be honest, but their roster is really good. They got some speed on that team.
Yeah.
the one thing that I question is I wonder about the physicality of Oregon when they go up against a team that's going to have a big offensive line or a big defensive line. They're going to run the ball and defense that's going to stop the run. I wonder how physical Oregon could be. They did well against Ohio State, but I think Ohio State's physicality has been questioned too in some games. You know, I know Lou Holtz called them out and Ryan Day got aggravated about that, but I mean, I think
Oh,
it's
yeah.
fair. I think it's a fair thing to question. So I think when Oregon, if they go up against a physical team like Georgia, how would they match up? Like Oregon, Georgia would be a fascinating matchup.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I mean, Dylan Gabriel's really good. I guess I could see why he transferred from Oklahoma, although Oklahoma, all they do is produce, really good quarterbacks, but they're different now with Venables there and
Yeah,
their struggles, and I wasn't sure how that was going to go.
I don't think he's a head coach, to
He
be
was,
honest.
I mean,
The
listen,
coordinator.
Dabo's has 2 national championships because he brought in great coordinators like
Yeah.
Venables, but yeah, I'm not blown away by Oregon.
Okay.
Their speed's elite. I will say, I don't know what you think about this, but Lanning, we're having the 12 guys in the field late in that game. I think that was by design, to run
I
some.
wouldn't put it past.
No, that was, if it was smart. He actually is a Norvell guy. He was on Norvell's staff at Memphis. And then he went to Georgia and worked for Kirby. So he's
Something about him though that just rubs me the wrong way. I don't know. Like Lanning just, same thing with Kirby. Kirby rubs me the wrong way too. He's a great coach, no doubt about it. Great recruiter. But to me, it just seems like Kirby don't give a damn about his players. You know what I mean? Like you're there to win and that's it. And
well, I mean, I don't know if you've seen how many incidents they've had in Athens with
terrible.
driving over 100 miles an hour
Yeah.
and causing serious. Yeah,
Serious.
it's that's going to catch up to them. The one thing I'll give Norvell credit for, even though the season's been a disaster, is that none of that's happened under his watch, and like
Yeah.
he'll get it figured out. The problem is he's lost so much of the fan base right now, and
Sure.
there's now the big donors are now really starting to question where it's going to go, rightfully so. I mean, it's just we finally got out of that that major valley from the end of Jimbo's years through Taggart, and Mike cleaned it up. Now he's got to clean up his own mess, and that's the difference. This is all his program now.
And another thing about Georgia, I seen a thing that they put out the other day that from 2016, I believe it was from, to now they have an average 37% graduation rate. I mean, that's pathetic. That's really pathetic. At that point, why do you even, you're basically a minor league for the NFL. I mean, that's just 37% is just garbage.
No, that's I read a similar stat. It's just an NFL pipeline right now. They recruit very, very well, and
Sure.
I don't know where that's going to go. It's all it's going to take is something significant that they can't cover up over there, and
Yeah.
but they'll be fine. They got it rolling, and I don't love watching them. I knew they were going to hand Florida State a tough one in the Orange Bowl, and they did, and it just is what it is. I think Notre Dame's coach is awesome, good guy. He
I like
has taken over with relative ease in the transition, and he's going to be good. And Norvell has his work cut out for him for sure. So I'm hoping we see it's just some plays made on Saturday night on both sides of the ball. Like you said, I mean, we're not going to win the game in all likelihood, but it wouldn't be bad for Notre Dame to get for Florida State, what's the term? Come and punch them in the mouth and play hard and just
I
and have a
agree.
good football game.
I agree. I think it'll be especially seeing those edge rushers of Florida State that are NFL guys, seeing them play to their potential. I think it'll help Notre Dame down the road. And getting back to Freeman, I really like Freeman. I think he's a class guy. He's really, I think he's going to be a good football coach, but I still think he's learning. He still never was a coach. And that's a tough spot. I remember when Holtz took over Notre Dame, he had like 20 years experience, and he said, I needed every one of that when I took over Notre Dame, and to go in there with no head coaching experience whatsoever, that's a tough spot. So I think he's made some really like bonehead stuff he's done, but I think overall, I think he's done a good job, and he needs to close this out. Like they have to close this 11-1, and then they have to get in the playoffs, see what happens there. But like you mentioned Georgia. When I said Oregon, I think it's the best team right now. I still think at the end of the year, I think Georgia's the team to beat. I think if you're going to win a national championship, I think you got to go through Georgia, because
Yep.
I still question Oregon's physicality when they play Georgia. Like, are they going to be able to match that? I don't know, because Georgia throws so many athletes at you. In the defensive line, they're so deep, and they keep coming at you and coming at you. And you saw what they did to Texas. I mean, they just, they were focused, and they just came in there and they pounded Texas. So
Yeah, they have that weird ability, when they're dialed in, they're very dangerous.
very dangerous. Even with Alabama, like the way they came back, storming back in that game, like, and then take the lead, and then Bama needed to, hit someone a big play. But even that, I mean, to come back the way they did, I mean, they are a dangerous team.
No, I agree. I think that's, to me, the most likely championship matchup. Although with 12 teams, I know some teams are going to get a bye or whatever, but it's going to be fun to watch. But that would be, I think, if you had to pick two right now, that would duke it out to the end. Probably throw Ohio State in there too. You kind of have to, and after that, it depends if a team gets hot. As when they get in and they roll in, build some confidence with a couple early wins in the playoff. And the thing is the longevity through this. No one's dealt with this before. These coaches haven't dealt with that before.
Oh.
You just play your season, and then you get a bowl game, and now it's just like, okay.
Yeah.
So that'll
Now
be
you end up playing what, 16 games? If
Yeah.
you're going to win it all, you got to play 16 games. I mean, that's a lot. It's like an NFL season.
Yeah. I mean, you can say, well, these kids also have, to study, and they're only 20 years old, and they got a lot of other, things going on. But they're professionals at this point. They have every resource available to them to focus on football. That's for sure.
Sure, no doubt about it.
So,
All right, buddy, this has been great. I mean, anything else you want to cover before we wrap it up? Anything else
no, I
we
mean,
talked about?
No, I think it's been great. I just
A nice break from JFK, buddy. Sometimes the JFK stuff will get you so depressed that you need a break.
Well, that's going to be we're with the election in the next couple days, and then hopefully the focus will be on November 22nd and the records releases. We've talked about that a lot on your show. Great show. I love coming on there, and I was listening to the Mexico City one the other day. That was great.
The one with David Joseph, or the one yeah.
So it's we're still doing everything we can to focus on the most current issues that everyone that's been on your show knows the case good enough, but that's where we're looking forward to that, and we'll all be in Dallas for that a conference together of the authors of the book. And but there's only 12 games the way I look at it, there's 12 Saturdays a year where I get to watch Florida State, good, bad, or ugly.
That's right.
And it's going to be over soon, and so I'm still going to be dialed in.
Hey, I was through some bad years with Ty Willingham and Bob Davie, and I never missed a game, so it's your team. Win, lose, no matter what. That's what drives me crazy about some of these fan bases, like Miami. Miami's awful fan base. Like, if they're winning, the place is packed. If they're not winning, the place is empty.
Well, I think I saw the announced attendance for Duke this past Saturday, who came in there like 6-1. Manny Diaz is their former coach. And there was like 14,000 fans.
That's it?
That's it.
Wow. So they're not important. They're winning, and they're not important people in there.
They were the number 4 in the country. Unless, I mean, Florida State is there, and not this year, but yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's not a fan base. It's a small alumni. Now, I do know some awesome Miami fans who actually went to school there, and we'll have a healthy conversation about the rivalry. But no, I put it this way: I wasn't going to take my kids to a night game there.
No. I heard some stories, and and Miami's always going to be my most hated team because of the rivalry in the '80s with Notre Dame, and that was such a fierce rivalry, the Catholics and the convicts rivalry. So I'm always going to have a special place, hatred for Miami. But and Notre Dame announced that they're opening next season in South Beach against Miami. That's the opener. So that's going to be interesting to open the season next year. And they also announced today that they're bringing Texas on for a 1-1 on the schedule, which is that schedule in 29. I think they're going to play Texas, Alabama, and Clemson in the same year. That's insane. Like that's
it's going to get more and more like that as college football merges towards what two, major conferences. I mean, it's whatever you want to call it, super leagues. Notre Dame will always have their place in that if they stay independent. But yeah, so Notre Dame travels really well, obviously. So Miami will have some fans in the stadium for that.
And it's the first game. You got to figure they show up for the first game next year, right?
Yeah, you got to go. That's an easy trip down there. Well, it's going to be fun this weekend, buddy. I'll probably send you a not so nice email during the game, only about Florida State, nothing about you guys. Just or I'll just be empathy is set in, or apathy, and I'll just be like, whatever,
I don't know. I think you guys are going to play well. I think it's going to be a good game. I really do. I think it's going to be a good game.
Vegas doesn't think so, but we're gonna tune in and hope for a couple turnovers.
Well, Vegas has been wrong before, so we'll see what happens.
Sounds good.
All right, buddy. This has been fantastic. So we'll get this up, and I'll let you know when I'll be talking to you during the game, buddy.
Oh yeah, for sure. We'll hopefully celebrate in the fourth quarter, and I'm just pound the over though on the 42.5. I'm telling you.
Okay. We'll see. I don't know. I mean, Notre Dame's defense. I mean, in Florida State, if Notre Dame's offense is struggling, who knows? But all right, I'll go with that. Pound the over.
I mean, it's
that is kind of low though. 42 is low.
It is low. It's only because we don't score,
right?
And but hopefully, I don't want to see. They've tried everything. They've tried running the quarterback. They've tried different schemes. They just can't block, and it's so frustrating because there's a lot of seniority on that line, and the pass pressures that these quarterbacks are under. And receivers are contagious to catching the ball. I don't know how much of them you've watched, but we've had just so many drops. It's just
I watched it. Yeah,
but that's okay. It's gonna be better Saturday.
All right, buddy. Expect a good game.
All right, Sean. Take care.
Thanks, buddy. All right, we'll see you.
Bye.
Bye, buddy.
That's Enough Out of You podcast is executive produced and written by Bill Rader and Sean Kane and edited by Bill Rader. The That's Enough Out of You podcast and logo are exclusive property of Bags of Chicken, LLC. Any rebroadcast, retransmission, or accounts of this podcast without the express written consent of Bags of Chicken, LLC is prohibited. So don't even try it.